Be sure to go to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. Do the same with the Grizzly Gentleman, 10% off at checkout on your fantastic beard products. Or you could shop via the TCG Player affiliate link in the description down below to help support the show. And last but of course not least, you can go to Grey Viking Games with the affiliate link below to pillage some sweet arena codes. Hello, Planeswalkers, Theric6, back with some more Magic the Gathering. Today I wanted to do something a little fun. Recently received my second shot of the COVID vaccine. Still doing a lot of work, but I figured I'd do something a little fun. I decided to look at the mystery booster playtest cards, just because they seemed really interesting. I was looking at lizards for some reason, cards that have the lizard creature type. And one of them was a playtest card, and I was like, it would be fun just to go through these and see which ones are more or less likely to actually see some print in black border. So what I'm going to do here today is just have a casual jaunt through some non-tournament legal cards to see which ones I think could be reasonably implemented. So first here we start with a Vanguard card, and now these operate very differently to pretty much any other card. You notice there's no casting cost here because a Vanguard card essentially modifies the way that you play the game. So here we have a requirement for you being able to use this Vanguard. You have starting hand and life total modifications, and then you have some permanent effect, right? I think that Vanguard is very interesting. I would love to see more Vanguard cards in the future. But beyond that, I would like to see Wizards attempt to implement Vanguard at least on Arena. I think having Vanguard as either a part of Brawl to make it a little bit more unique, or even like experimenting with Vanguard being a part of Historic. I think both of those would go a long way to making the metagame more interesting. Now, do I think that Vanguard is likely to enter constructed playability, constructed legality? No, not even remotely. They do feel, in many circumstances, kind of like companions, and I think that if you can modify the rules, I think, in a relatively simple fashion to get to a point where Vanguard takes up sideboard slot. Maybe it's in the command zone, so it can't be interacted with. Each player reveals their they select their Vanguard and they reveal their Vanguard to their opponent before mulligans are even taken. So I just think it would be kind of interesting to see that implemented in a more upfront way. I really like game modification cards, Plane Chase, even Arch Enemy, and I think Vanguard would probably be the easiest way, the easiest to implement on Arena, and I'd like to see that. Banding Sliver. All slivers have banding. Never gonna happen. Wizards is never gonna have banding again. Period. Maybe they can come up with some sort of a fixed banding, but I just don't see it. Bane Slayer Aspirin is a very interesting one. It cares about emblems. I'm not actually going to be reading the cards as they are. You can see them. I'm just going to kind of talk about the main takeaways. So what's interesting here is that this is a card that cares about emblems. Now, Wizards has stated relatively clearly that they don't want things to interact with emblems. So you're not going to see something that's like destroy an emblem, right? Destroy target emblem, right? Because emblems aren't things necessarily. And I think that's something that Wizards should keep to, right? I think that emblems should remain something that can't really be interacted with. But I do think that cards referencing emblems could see some constructed design. Now, I don't think there's a ton of design space for them, but I think one of the first places we're likely to see emblem reference will be in Planeswalker decks. So I could see a card being printed in a Chandra Planeswalker deck. Are those still... Honestly, I don't even know if Planeswalker decks are still a thing. I don't know if Wizards is still making them. Wizards makes and destroys new products all the time, so who knows? But I do think that seeing a Chandra creature, maybe it's an elemental, and then if you control a Chandra emblem, this creature has first strike or haste or something like that, or tap, add a red mana to your mana pool, right? I think having cards like that, especially ones that are to specific planeswalkers, would be pretty interesting. They'd be limited in what they can be designed around, but I do think generally speaking that cards that reference having emblems, it's kind of cool. You could have something for like a Jace card where it's like it's divination, except if you have a Jace emblem, draw one more card, or scry first. Like it's literally 3 mana, sorcerer speed, draw 2 cards. If you control a Jace emblem, scry 1 before you draw, or something like that. So while I don't think that these are likely, I do think that it's possible, and I would kind of like to see it. Enroll in the Coalition makes you a flag bearer, and as far as I'm aware, the main issue with this is that it gives you a creature type. Now, while we aren't creatures, and we aren't technically planeswalkers, we are flavorfully, but not in terms of the mechanics of the game. I think one of the biggest issues here is just with kind of not Mal'Ganis, the Jiraxis effect, right? In Hearthstone, some of you might know this, early on, there was a Jiraxis Warlock card that, when played, turned your hero into Jiraxis. For a long time, there was a Warlock card that cost, I think, 0 mana and just like destroyed a demon, and you gain 5 life or something like that. If your opponent became Jiraxis, you could use that card to just destroy your opponent. If there was a card that said destroy target flag bearer, which I don't think there is, but hey, there might be. Flag bearers are old. Then I could see Wizards just not wanting to deal with that confusion, right? You are a rogue and you get some sort of benefit. You are a wizard and you get some sort of benefit. I don't think that's likely to occur. What I do think would be interesting to occur is essentially enchantments under the same umbrella as this. Not that make you creature types, but make it so that your opponents have to choose you for certain things, right? I could literally see a weird card where it's like, if a card an opponent controls would target a player, one or more players, at least one of those has to target you, right? I think something like that would be interesting. There's not a lot of design for that, but I just think it's neat. 5 Kids in Trench Coat counts as 5 creatures for spells and effects that count the number of creatures you control. I think that this card could... I think cards with this style of text could exist in Black Border. Obviously, the fact that the card, like, on its face has that information means that it's not really an issue with, memory overload or anything like that. And, this would affect something like Blasphemous Act. I think one of the main issues here is, like, it counts as 5 creatures for spells and effects that count the number of creatures. But some people might take that to suggest, like, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 5 target creatures. Counts as 5 for effects that count the number. Obviously, obviously, at least to me, an effect that says distribute, or whatever I said initially, for the +1/+1 counters, that's not going to be counting the number of creatures, but I can understand Wizards being hesitant to include something like this in the game, because some people would be confused about that. It's like, what do you mean I can't put 5 counters on this creature? It counts as 5 creatures. Again, one of the main takeaways you'll see with a lot of these are the fact that there's just generally not a ton of design space. As one-ofs, they're pretty interesting, but it's very difficult to find a lot of environments where having multiple cards that count as more cards is going to matter, right? So I think that while this is possible in Black Border, it's just not likely for design space reasons. Frontier Explorer. This card I actually think is relatively likely. We're already seeing Wizards embrace the sideboard, at least in Best of 1, as a kind of constant wish board. And giving white an effect like this, while obviously not helping white in Commander, because Commander doesn't have a sideboard unless you play with sideboards, in which case, wow, Commander has sideboards. While it doesn't help them there, having cards that allow you to access your sideboard for specific things, it's not new, right? This effect isn't technically new. You have things like Karn already. You downtick Karn, you go grab an artifact from your sideboard, put it in your hands. Whoop-de-doo. This card lets you do something slightly different, which is what I understand. Like, technically, if this just said, like, get a basic land you own from outside the game, put it in your hand, it works hunky-dory, right? But this allows you to just play one of those, and there are some reasons why that's technically better. Instant speed, discard comes to mind. If for some reason, I'm trying to think of other... I'm sure there are very, very small edge cases where it's better to not have to put it in your hand. But generally speaking, effects like this, they already exist, and I think Wizards is embracing that more, which frankly I appreciate. So I would honestly expect White to have an effect like this at some point. Probably not for... maybe not, because it doesn't really need it in... doesn't really need it in Constructed, I guess. Yeah, I guess for this one, like, mechanically speaking, it's fine, but the need for it just isn't there where it can matter. So, Imaginary Friends, we've seen cards that make things that die immediately, or things that require you to have some sort of buff in order for the creature to stay around. There's like Force of Savagery or something like that. It's like an 8/0 for 3 or something like that. You have to essentially have some sort of pump around in order to keep it alive because it has 0 toughness. It'll die immediately due to state-based action. This is an arcane. That's the reason this card is unlikely to see print. I doubt Wizards is going to bring back Arcane or Splice onto Arcane, but I would be very surprised if Wizards doesn't print more Splice onto Sorcery, Splice onto Instant. I'm pretty sure they've done a little bit of that here and there, but I think that just having a card that's literally create a nothing creature, or in this case, nothing creatures, there's 3 of them, I think it's, again, possible, just unlikely. Metagamer. This references a very specific list of cards, and for that reason alone, never going to happen. In days of yore, we would have things like Wind Chime, Ship in a Bottle, or something like that. We had cards that referenced if a card is from Homelands, if a card is from Ice Age, if a card is from Arabian Nights, right? We've seen effects like that in the distant Magic past. We are unlikely to see those again, because of things like reprints, because not everyone is going to know, not everyone's going to necessarily know where a card is from. Oh, this symbol is Mirrodin? Well, how do I know, right? If I'm a new player, how do I know? I just have to take your word for it. I mean, obviously we have the internet, but still, like, there are legitimate reasons why we could not see an effect like this in Black Border. Wizards doesn't want to reference the stack. This is a card that references the stack. I think that Wizards could reference the stack, but I think that if Wizards does, it won't be for several more years. I love the idea of this card, but unfortunately, like, one, not a ton of design space in general for referencing the stack. Now, obviously, like, interacting with the stack, copying spells, countering spells, all of the stuff, sure, already happens. I could imagine some effects that discount spells if a certain number of spells are on the stack. Like, let's say it is a... Sure, let's say it's like a white card. It's an instant. Gain 1 life for each spell cast this turn. Copy it for each spell currently on the stack, right? Like, it's like a weird version of Weather the Storm, but you know, it's a way to have Storm without Storm. I could see like a really big blue spell that's like called Final Word or something like that, where it's like 7 blue, and it's like costs 1 less for each spell on the stack. Exile any number of spells on the stack, right? Something like that. Maybe even has split second, right? Like, there are things that you can do. There are ways that you can design cards that care about the stack, but I think that the level of complexity, at least at present, isn't worth the kind of shallow pool that you can draw from for these abilities. Ref Underdog Champ. So the main thing here, it mentions errata, doesn't matter, but if you lost a game this match, this and other dogs you control get +1/+1. Referencing things like that are almost certainly never going to come to the game in a really meaningful way. In the huge distant future of 2025, I don't know why I said 2025, 2050, sure, let's go with that. Maybe we'll see something like this, but I think that generally speaking, a card in Black Border is not likely to reference you having lost. Especially, like, imagine a situation where you go first, right? You've gone first, you win game 1. Cool. Game 2, if you win game 2, awesome, right? You've won game 2, you've won your match. If you lose game 2, not only are you going to be able to choose to go first, and since you're playing what I assume to be an aggressive deck with Dog Tribal, that'll already be a boon, but now your creatures are even stronger, right? If you lost game 1, my creature just gets stronger for games 2 and 3, making it more likely for me to win. And I just think that, generally speaking, Wizards are going to stay away from that, and I think I'm fine with that. Main thing here, one, it's very similar to the Enroll and the Coalition card. It gives a player an ability, which technically speaking only creatures can have. Other spells and permanents could have some abilities. Trample, Lifelink, Death Touch, all of those things can technically be given to a lot of things. But also, it's a tribal instant. I, for one, would love to see more tribal. I think Wizards... I think the main issue with tribal is when a card feels tribal, but it doesn't have the tribal tag because it's not a part of the set. We already see a lot of... maybe I shouldn't say a lot, and I shouldn't say complaints, but a lot of complaints when Wizards prints a card with a keyword, but they don't have the keyword. So Landfall, for example, right? In Landfall, the ability, the actual keyworded ability, is that ability word? Look, I don't care. When it's in Zendikar, we have Landfall. Cool, we can have cards that care about Landfall. But in other places, such as core sets, we can have something that says, when a land enters the battlefield under your control, make an elemental. Technically speaking, that card has Landfall. But realistically, it doesn't. And some people are a little upset by this because essentially they're the same, but they're not. So I'm using this as an example because if a card feels like it should be a tribal card, but isn't, that just comes with some annoyance, right? For example, Sarah's Wings, tribal instant angel. Sure, I guess Sarah was a planeswalker, not an angel, but she made a bunch of angels. What about Angel's Grace? Should that now be a tribal instant angel? What about Demonic Tutor? Should that be a tribal sorcery demon? Right? So it just gets to a point where it would kind of be too annoying for Wizards to deal with. I would really love to see more tribal. You could even kind of limit the tribes. So we've already seen tribal Eldrazi cards. I think that's totally reasonable. I think having tribal cards for Changeling, also pretty reasonable. Tribal cards for Slivers, just like very specific and distinct tribes. I think them having tribal would be fine, but again, it's probably more hassle than it's worth. This is essentially just giving an explanation that isn't needed, right? There's no reason for this to say destroy all small creatures, when it literally could say destroy all creatures with a total power of toughness 4 or less, total power of toughness 5 to 8, total power of toughness 9 plus, right? It would be said like this. Maybe we could see a set in the future that cares about small, medium, and large creatures. The main thing that comes to mind would be like Segovia versus. Gosh, there was a card that referenced Segovia. It was an angel. It's like a 1/1 angel with flying and vigilance or something like that. And it's like a huge plane, Gigantoplex or something like that, and Segovia, which is like this tiny plane. So if we see some sort of weird kind of conflux Shards of Alara style set where like these two planes are emerging, where it's like this huge plane going through this weird spatial warp, and it's merging evenly somehow to this tiny plane, I think maybe you could see something like that. But again, like, I don't think the design space is worth the annoyance. Like, it could just say total. Now, caring about total power toughness, that's not really something we see a ton of, if at all. And I think at some point we could see something that that cares more about total power toughness on creatures. A 3/3 would be the same as a 1/5, would be the same as a 2/4, right? Like, in those contexts. I think that, again, not a ton of design space, but there's things that you can do there that I wouldn't be surprised if we see. Stack of paperwork. This is another one of those where, like, they're bringing back rules from the past. Unlikely. We've seen some. Yearlock comes to mind, where it essentially brings back mana burn. But mana burn works as a standalone effect, right? Your unspent mana hurts you. Sure, makes sense. There's a little bit of like rules understanding that needs to come with it, because not everyone knows exactly what mana pools are, and et cetera, et cetera. But going back to combat damage using the stack, it adds way too much complication. Awful. Wizened Arbiter, essentially the same thing as I said with Frontier Explorer. This card easily could be an actual card. I see essentially no issue with this. And in fact, I would love to see a card like this. You have to reveal specifically a white card. They could even make it a mono white card. I don't know. Do they reference mono colors? I know they reference like destroy target mono color permanent. Like, that's a thing that I actually think that's a card that we're getting in Strixhaven. But I don't know if they reference like only like this has to be a mono white card or a mono red card. But I think having something like this as in White's repertoire would be pretty interesting. White being kind of the main like wishboard targets, or wishboard color. I think it'd be pretty cool. This one's never gonna happen for constructed legality. We've seen Wizards try and kind of fail to do something along these lines with companions, but taking Commander rules are specific to Commander, right? In the context of a 60-card modern game, a commander means nothing. Like, you can put a command tower in your legacy deck. It's not going to do anything for you. There is no commander in the context of that. It doesn't make sense at all to introduce something like that. It would be like, it wouldn't be exactly the same, but it'd be like having a card that gives you a two-headed giant partner, right? It'd be that level of kind of weird things. A booster effect, where like you draft from a booster with your opponent, and then you shuffle those up into your deck, right? Like that type of thing is unlikely to see any real black border printing, because it blends formats in ways that they shouldn't blend. Animate Spell is freaking weird. It's another spell that like cares about the stack. It's enchanting in instant sorcery, which for what it's worth, I don't think is a thing. And then like it's just very strange. It essentially has like square stats based on its mana value, sure. But other than that, it's just a when carding leaves the battlefield. Yeah, essentially it like just becomes it just becomes a vanilla creature. It's very strange. Like this, there's essentially no reason for the spell to exist, essentially. But I remark, Scrycast. With Scry being evergreen now, I actually think Scrycast is something that that we might see more of. They've dabbled with this a little bit with Penumbra Worm? No, Panglacial Worm. Panglacial Worm, if I recall correctly, is a card from Cold Snap that you can cast if you've seen it while searching your library. You can cast it while searching your library. I think that something like this that cares about you seeing it on Scry, I think that's an inevitability. It'll be a while for sure, but I see no reason. Now, Scrycast for this costing 0, that's a little bit much. But I think with Scry becoming more ubiquitous, I think seeing cards that care about you scrying is more likely to occur. This one's strange. Again, this is a card that only really cares about 60 cards constructed. I mean, technically, even it works in sealed or limited, because technically their sideboard is the rest of their draft stuff, or their sealed pool or whatever. I don't think the main issue with this card is the fact that it references a sideboard. I think the main issue with this card is that it references your opponent's sideboard, right? Like, this is similar to Wizened Arbiter, right? They both essentially look at sideboards. Wizened Arbiter, obviously, in casual, can get specifically any card that you own that's white, whereas Command the Chaff doesn't work in casual if you're not also playing with sideboards in casual. That sounds like a sin. But yeah, like, it's a weird card. It's just a weird card. The fact that it references playing a card from your opponent's sideboard is so strange. Control win condition. This is hilarious. This is a card. We talked a little bit about memory issues somewhere, and how they weren't issues. It's an issue here. Shroud, even if Shroud is essentially phased out, I wouldn't be surprised to see Shroud every once in a blue moon. The main issue here is that you have to keep track of the turns you've taken. That's Wizards is not going to have a card like that. I think the last time we've seen that was with Sarah's Avenger, the 2-mana 3/3 that you can't cast it on turns 1, 2, or 3. And the main reason that card like actually sees any dang play is because Aether Vial. Aether Vial doesn't care. Control win condition, it absolutely cares. Because it's not just like, I'm not sure it's been long enough, I'll wait one more turn and then I'm sure it'll be fine. And then, like, even if a judge gets involved, like, it's relatively easy to figure out a turns until like turn 5, very easy to figure out. So Sarah's Avenger, not too bad. Trying to make sure you know how many turns you've taken, especially in a deck where this is obviously referencing taking extra turns. It's not gonna happen. Terrible idea. Do over, restart the turn. No. We've seen bounce effects like Cyclonic Rift. We've seen end the turn effects that end the turn and exile things on the stack. Restarting a turn where you have to essentially do... Yeah, look like, for information from hidden zones like the hand, reconstruct as best you can and do the rest at random. This is never going to happen, right? Because you consider things like, maybe I have a card where I scry at the beginning of my turn. Okay, so I scry that to the bottom, but I have to put the card that I drew back on top, and then put the scried card back on top, but my opponent has to trust me that the card I put back on top for my draw is literally the card that I actually drew that turn, where, you know, in some circumstances, things like Miracle, you do have to keep track of that, but it's nowhere near to the same extent. And I'm talking about, that's just one player, and that's just the first, like, actions of the game, of the turn. So, never gonna happen. Enchantment Improvement is an enchantment and loses all other card types. We have essentially seen effects like this. we've seen effects similar to this, I should say. We've seen Song of the Dryad, Escape to the Moon. Does that make a thing of Basic Land? I don't remember. The Song of the Dryads is like the main one that comes up. You turn a thing into a land. You turn a thing into another thing that essentially doesn't do what the original thing was supposed to do. This still has it keep its abilities, which is strange. But it just loses card types. But it can only enchant other. I guess the main issue with this card specifically is that it doesn't do anything. If you enchant an enchantment and make that enchantment an enchantment, but it still has its abilities, it's just the enchantment. Yeah, the main problem with this card is that this specific card's weird. We've seen effects like this. We'll continue to see effects like this. Wizards needs to do a better job of doing things like that. Formula just for tribal, we talked about already. Unlikely to see that for just elementals. Instead of just the battlefield, draw 2 cards. You may cast creature cards from your hand as though they were the card Ball Drifter. This is, again, kind of similar to this Enroll in the Coalition style effect. I think that some of this you can kind of see, right? You can be in a situation where essentially you can. I could see a world where like enchantment as a battlefield, draw 2 cards. Cool. That's like a Mull Drifter thing. I love that they put this on a Mull Drifter, by the way. And then instead of this, you may cast cards from your hand as though they were the card Mull Drifter. I think a card that just said like you can evoke cards from your hands for 2 and a blue. That's a lot more likely. I think that's how much Mull Drifter's evoke cost is. That's much more likely. Evoking, turning your cards. Turning the cards in your hand that you cast to cards that are different, unlikely. We have seen similar effects like this in green specifically. We've seen a card from Innistrad. I can picture the dude just like this big buff elemental. I think he has some red like leaves on his face or something like that. Or is that a beard? Maybe it's not an elemental? I'm not entirely sure. I can see it in my mind's eye. But essentially the card, like each creature enters the battlefield as a copy of this card. Maybe it's just each of your creatures, but something like that. Then you have like Spreading Mass or something like that, also from Innistrad block. A lot of Invasion of the Body Snatcher vibes, where when it deals combat damage to another creature, that becomes a copy of this. So cards on the battlefield already, sure, we've seen some of that in green. Turning your spells into other named spells, very unlikely. Innocuous Insect, I think, is reasonable. Like, it just has buyback. I think it's cool that Snell draws the insect, but I think the main weird thing here is that this is an effect on cast. Do we have any things that have effects on cast? Like creatures, I mean. I'm not sure. Oh wait, what am I talking about? Hydrocrasis. Yeah, this is just like Hydrocrasis. Yeah, there's no problem with this card. Could easily see print. What the is this? Yeah, there's no issue with this card. This is just a blue version of Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. Card sees play. Card is also reasonable. I mean, we don't really see Homerids, Camerids. I didn't even know Nautilid is a creature type. That's interesting. Yeah, we don't really see those, but it's a strange lord. I wouldn't be surprised. I gotta check. Oh, right. Gotta do T. No, there are no Nautiloids. Okay, Q. This is a weird one. It's a weird one because there's not a ton of design space. We've seen some hand size increases in blue. We have Reliquary Tower. There are effects such as Finale of... I don't know which one. It's the blue one. I believe you get to have a no max hand size for the rest of the game at some point. Then you have like decreases in hand size, specifically in black with the rats. You would have a few rats that would decrease hand size. But other than that, it's a very common thing. There's also not a ton you can do with it, right? Even putting your opponent's max hand size to 4, unless you're going against specifically control, and that's like draw go control, it's not necessarily going to do a ton. So unlikely, mostly just because it doesn't have a thing. This is just weird level up, essentially. It's weird level up. I would like to see the level up return. I really like the idea of level up. I think that the cards need to be balanced a little bit differently, but fun card, cool card, sure. This references a match again. I'm not gonna see a real print because of that. Was this printed before Ikoria? I think it was, right? Well, we have flying counters now, so this literally could be a card, like today. Ransom is interesting. I don't know how many. If Ransom is just essentially like for theft effects, Ransom doesn't have a ton of design space. If Ransom is treated more like Ward, where like you do a thing until your opponent pays the ransom or this thing goes away, then that's a little different. So like you can even kind of see it on cards. It's like this creature has trample until your opponent pays the ransom, right? Like imagine a really well-costed green creature has trample. At some point, your opponent is like, I don't want to do it. I gotta pay 4 mana and discard a card in order to pay this thing's ransom, so I can chump block it now, right? Like I think looking at it in that way, I think it opens up the design space. But it would have to have a different name. I don't think ransom will always make sense unless it's specifically a theft effect. As a one-of effect, I think this card could weirdly. I think this card could be black border. It just you can't design a bunch of things. Like the thing is, right? Like you have effects that care about discard, sure. You have effects that care about the library sometimes. Like you have effects that care about these things happening. It's enough for a single card. Creating token cards, not going to happen. There's already some issues with shuffling tokens into your actual deck in tournament environments. Usually it's fine because it's a token, like who cares? But there also can be issues with shuffling sideboard cards into your main deck. So where you go to your next match, you've drawn one of your sideboard cards and you're like, gotta call the judge on myself, and like you'll be more vigilant, but sometimes it happens again, and you don't want it to happen 2 or 3 times. So making tokens that are meant to be shuffled in, not going to happen. Making tokens of lands, which we'll actually see in a bit as well, I think I would love to see. I think that's a really interesting way of dealing with something that we'll talk about later. This is an interesting effect. It's a Punisher effect, like Browbeat, where you're giving your opponent a choice. I think the main issue with this one is, well, the thing is, there are effects that give you no max hand size for the rest of the game, and those don't have memory issues associated with them. I think that card could actually be printed. It wouldn't have truth or dare. Like it would just be your opponent chooses one. But I think this card could be printed. So there's some interesting stuff with this card. First of all, it's an alien. Not gonna happen. Well, no, Wizards not gonna make alien cards. The main issue here is the use of instant for creature cards. It's, if I recall correctly, Mark Rosewater at some point considered, maybe it wasn't Mark Rosewater, but it was one of the lead designers at some point in Magic's history considered making it so that all instants and sorceries were just sorceries. The instants were just instant sorceries. And then instead of having flash, you would have instant creature, instant enchantment. Like instant would just be essentially a modifier of a type that allowed you to do things at instant speed. Obviously, that didn't go through for, I'm sure, a number of reasons. But at this point, I think it's too late. There are some things I don't think it's too late. For example, Naga should be Naga and Snake. Gorgons should probably be Gorgons and Snakes. Wolves should also be dogs. That's neither here nor there. This card is just kind of strange. This essentially is making weird planeswalkers as creatures. It's probably not gonna happen. Like, I think Spell Shapers, the OG 3-mana Jaya card, those are more likely to be planeswalker light creatures than having cards with spark counters. I mean, charge counters makes more sense in some situations, but like, it's just strange. Now, using counters on creatures, I think there's probably more room for that. We've seen a little bit of that in Amonkhet. We had a creature that could remove a counter from itself to make mana of any color, I think. I would love to see, first of all, I would love to see more negative counters. But second, I think having creatures remove counters, especially now that we have some ability word counters. For what it's worth, I think we should see more ability word counters in the future. Flying counters, trample counters, all those things. Yeah, at some point, I think having more of that would be kind of cool. These are putting tokens into your graveyard. This doesn't work with the rules that we have now. Tokens go to the graveyard and then they cease to exist. I don't think they want to change that rule. I think that rule is important. I think that this card could not exist. Yeah, and that's essentially it. Buried Ogre is weird. I'm sure there's some way to abuse the crap out of that, but I don't think it's an impossibility, right? We've seen cards that mess with your mulligans. We've seen cards that start in your sideboard, but you also have access to them with the companions. I think that it's possible that this card, cards like this even, could be printed in black border. I think that if this card was worded very slightly differently, it could be fine. Instead of just like cursing the opponent, I think create a Celestine curse token and attach it to target player, or that player or whatever. I think that is something that could easily see print. This is Tarmogoyf. This is there's no problem with this card being printed. It's Tarmogoyf. Yeah. Sure, this effect is weird, but we've seen effects like this before. It's Tarmogoyf. This card is strange because it has no way of tapping itself. And since it has no way of tapping itself, it's gonna be hard for you to tap this consistently to get use out of it. That said, I would like to see more baubles like this, more artifacts that are just weird. Like that Darkseer Relic comes to mind. That card literally does nothing. It's a 0 mana indestructible artifact. That's it. And this card has upside if you can activate it. And I think having cards where you get a cool benefit, but you have to jump through hoops, I would love to see that. Even if it's like limited in scope, it's just fun. I like those fun style things. This card could be printed. It's just incredibly unlikely. I guess the main issue with this card is memory issues, but you could literally just put bog counters on lands and then attach the rules to the counters as like lands with bog counters are swamps. Boom. This card easily printable. Could you have a creature that literally says can't die? Could you have a creature that essentially says can't die? Possibly. I think it can work within the rules, especially if it has the reminder text here like this. Again, very limited design space. You can't put this on very many things because things that can't die require exile effects or bounce effects, and those aren't necessarily going to be things that you're going to see a lot. So while I think it can work within the rules, I think it's unlikely. Frogkin Kidnapper. We essentially have this card. This essentially is Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosas. Excuse me. Invitational card. You choose a non-land card from it, ransom that card. Instead of ransom, they just have to they can cast it, but it costs more. Yeah, I mean this essentially is just the new white card. As you can see, can be printed. I need to go a little faster. I figured I was like, hey, I'm just gonna do a fun light video. Didn't realize how many of these I wanted to talk about. Luckily, we're getting some repetition. This makes token cards. It's not gonna happen. Especially considering Gunk is a non-card. Large Pox. This isn't what Large Pox should be. Large Pox literally should be each player discards half of their hand, loses half of their life, sacrifices half of their creatures, and half of their lands. I think that's all the things that Pox does. I think, yeah, life, land, creatures, hand? Yeah. This could see play. We've seen something similar with, like, Decimator Web from New Phyrexia, or Mirrored and Besieged, maybe? I'm not sure exactly which. But, yeah. They're not going to print this card. I think it'd be hilarious, but they're not going to do it. You lose the game. I really want to see this card, but it probably wouldn't. Spell Morph. We've had Morph on creatures. We've had Morph on some non-creatures. Zoetic Cavern comes to mind. Could we see Spell Morph? I think that we could. I think it'd be annoying as hell. And I think that annoyance would lead the designers to not make very many, but yeah, I think Spellmorph. I think Spellmorph could be fine. Making them instants would probably be too much, though. I think they would have to be sorceries. Although, wait, ooh, you kind of can't without changing the rules of Morph, though, right? Because the way Morph works is you can turn them at face up at any time. It doesn't even, like, use the stack. That does pose a problem. Reverse Miracle, it's haha funny. It's very different from Panglacial Worm. Panglacial Worm just has to be there. Needing this to be exactly on the bottom it can lead to situations where your opponent might find it too convenient, and it's going to be kind of difficult to prove impropriety. And like for that reason alone, like we already saw a little bit of issues with at the beginning of Miracles, and like I mean you could literally like do this, or like, all right, you pick up your deck, you look at the bottom card, and you're like, okay, I'm reverse miracling this, like, but it changes the way people play, in a way that's a little too different. Like obviously, like I say untap, upkeep, draw whenever I'm playing Magic, because it just helps me like make sure I'm going through all my triggers and stuff. And when I draw, I've gotten into the habit of not immediately adding the card to my hand, even if I'm not playing Miracles in the deck I'm playing. But I still do that because it's not that difficult to kind of just look at what you've drawn, then add it to your hands. Having to do this every time you search, probably not fun. Storm of Locutus, this card could see play. There are cards that care about having certain creature types. This card could see, not play print. Beholder, if we don't see D&D races in the Eberron, not Eberron, I wish it was Eberron, that would be fucking cool. In the Forgotten Realms set, I will be upset. I want a Beholder in Magic the Gathering. Period. We've seen effects kind of like this. We've seen effects kind of like this on Hydras, where instead of being killed, you remove counters from it. This time the counters aren't +1/+1 counter, so it's not like factored into its damage. We also have seen like demon cards that allow you to do things like this, where you get to do dumb things on attack, or even just ETB. So I think this card could see print with very slight tweakings. This card literally could see print, but like, what's the point? Like in limited, this card would just be stupid good. I mean, kind of ignoring the stats on it right now. Just like an effect like this, pretty decent, right? Like instead of 40, you have to play 53, at least 53, and then like in your deck you have just a strong tutor. As long as your pool is good enough where 53 isn't terrible, you have 53 actual playables. I mean, technically it's not 53, but whatever. And then like in constructed, it's just weird. Like with Yorion already. Oh well, no, I guess with Yorion, they would have to specify like Yorion, by the way, sets your minimum deck to 80. So Q, you'd have to be playing at least 93. Woo. It just adds too much complexity for essentially no benefit. It really doesn't do all that much. This card's weird. It feels very similar to Clash from Lorwyn Block, except Clash is more elegant. I think having an effect like this, I was gonna say I think having an effect like this, except for Clash, would be better. But I think the main issue for a card like this is that your opponent will never be kind of incentivized not to clash with you. I guess if it's like they have to discard a card unless they win a clash, like unless they decide to clash with you, and if they win that clash, they don't have to discard anything. If they lose the clash, they have to discard 2. Right? Like I guess like that it could be fine. Yawgmoth's Testament. This card could see print. Power level concerns aside, this card could see print. This essentially turns your cards into shocks. I'm gonna conflict with what I said earlier, Because Missile, at least at present, isn't a magic card. Mulldrifter is a magic card. Missile isn't. Yeah, Missile isn't. I feel like this would be fine to see print. We've seen randomness in red already in Magic. I think this card could literally see play or see print. It shouldn't. This is the lizard I was talking about. This is hilarious. We've seen effects that care about having cards in your opening hand. The Chancellors from New Phyrexia, the Sphinx from Ravnica? I think it's the one that scries for 4 if you have it in your opening hand. I want to say that's a Ravnican Sphinx. I don't recall. I think there is more room for cards with, if they're in your start. Oh, ley lines. I think there is more room for cards having in your starting hand effects. I think becoming the starting player, especially on an aggressively costed card, nope, not gonna happen. At least not as a 2-mana 2/1. This card would be stupid. This in your opening hand, you get to go first. Oh, you won the first game? Cool. That means your opponent has to go first. Psych. This card's in my opening hand again. I'm gonna go first again. I'm going to kill you. Like, it's too good. The Motivate reminds me a lot of Monstrous. Monstrous, they had they gave them +1/+1 counters in order to slightly decrease the memory issues with the Monstrous cards. Like, I don't know if this card's monstrous. For what it's worth, it didn't really help. Because you can have... Yeah, I'm pretty sure with Monstrous you can have counters on them and still make them monstrous. Yeah, it's not like Adapt. Although I think Adapt was meant to be a fixed version of Monstrous. But I don't remember. I mean, they literally could have just said put an adaptation counter on it or something. As it is, this would have to, like, put a counter on it or something. But after that, it's totally fine. Ah, instant. I was wondering what was wrong with this card. Yeah, if this doesn't say instant, and it just had flash, could see print. Mana Abundance, I think that as a one-off card, this could see print in a commander set. But as a world enchantment, I did forget about the fact that this is a world enchantment. World enchantments essentially been phased out. World enchantments really aren't used anymore, and I think for good reason. I think world enchantments could see a sort of comeback where they attempt to act as constructed plane chase, essentially. In a context like that, I could see world enchantments coming back. I doubt it's high on Wizards' to-do list, but I think this card could see print. It would just be fucking annoying. Yeah, this card opens a booster. No, not gonna happen on Black Border, essentially. World enchantments. This reminds me a little bit of some Yu-Gi-Oh mechanics that care about the column that a card is in. And it's fine in Yu-Gi-Oh because you have a limited number of columns, right? You got magic trap, creature, blank, creature, magic trap, creature, link, area, thing, creature, magic trap, etc., etc. And you can do that. With Magic, though, you can have a lot of creatures. And just dealing with that, I think, just would make this not worth it. Cube Beetles. This references the stack. And it reverses the order of the stack, which essentially means nothing else is going to go on the stack, right? Like, instants essentially become useless. Or no, I guess. Yeah, not at that point you don't want to do anything in response. You have to do everything like pre-response, where if you think your opponent is going to activate an ability or cast a certain spell that's like good, then you have to like wait until you have priority, but they don't do that thing, and then you can do the thing that you wanted, and they can't respond profitably because this card's on the field. It just leads to too many headaches. I think they should start referencing the stack more, but not in this way. Moving right along. This is kind of similar to ninjutsu, and I think as long as it's costed well, I don't see a reason why this couldn't see play. Creatures being able to be attacked directly, probably just not going to happen. I don't really see a reason in the rules to do it. Yeah, I just don't see a reason to do it. Switching who can and can't block, absolutely reasonable. I think this card could see print easy. Untapped creatures can't block, tapped creatures can block. It's fucking hilarious. It incentivizes combat, which is what red is wanting to do generally. It makes it so that creatures essentially can't block the turn they come into play either, because they'll typically be untapped. I just think it's hilarious. First to strike, I don't think first to strike is going to... I don't think it's reasonable, but I do want to talk a little bit about triple strike and last strike. Both of those cards could, both of those abilities could easily be created. The way first strike and double strike works is that if a creature is in combat with first or double strike, then a new combat damage step is created, the first strike damage step. First strike creatures only deal damage in the first strike damage step. Creatures with double strike deal damage in both the first strike and regular combat damage step. A creature with last strike, if a creature with last strike or triple strike is on the battlefield during combat, a last strike damage step is created. Creatures with last strike only deal damage during the last strike damage step. Creatures with triple strike deal damage during the first normal and last strike damage steps. Last strike and triple strike work within the bounds of the rules. I would love to see last strike at least. It doesn't have a ton of design space, but you could see an area where it's like a 1/4 creature. If this creature has damage marked on it, I don't know how to reference it exactly, but it's like if this creature has been dealt damage this turn, it gets +2/+0. It's a static ability, you know. It only it has +2 while it's damaged. So the idea is like you're able to block something. Like if it's a 1/4, you could block a 3/3 and kill it, right? But you know, as a 1/4, you're not going to get a lot of damage on offense. I think maybe the fact that last strike creatures would essentially have to be designed in such a way that incentivizes defense. I think Wizards would be less likely to want to print those, but I think it's cool. This cast copies of cards. There are some spell shapers, I think, that make tokens of well-known creatures. One of them makes a token of Llanowar Elves from Future Sight, I think. Another one creates Drudge Skeletons. It's like a 1/1 with a single black to regenerate it. I think that's also from Future Sight. We've seen effects like that, but the thing is they lay out exactly what the what the object is. This doesn't, so no. This, again, feels like not the Muldrifter case. It does turn something into a known magic card, but it's a little different because it's a spell that's already on the stack. I'm more inclined to find that that's fine. Elemental Instant, fire. So, right off the bat, no. No. No? Wait, what? Elemental Instant? Whenever... Oh, okay. Whenever this is countered or fizzles, you may copy and choose new targets for the copy. No. First of all, Wizards isn't going to reference fizzling. Second, elemental and fire, no. Yeah, the thing is, like, what would be the point of if an effect like this, right? It would just be better if it was like can't be countered, or even if it, like you could have a way to get around fizzling as well. It's just like if this card would have no legal targets as it tries to resolve, you may choose new targets for the copy. Sure, why not? Or you may choose new targets. Oops. This references the stack, but it references the stack in a way that I think is from different sources that were on the stack simultaneously at that time. Yeah, this references the stack in a convoluted way. I don't think it's worth it. Shuffle your whammy deck. Then reveal cards from the top of your whammy deck until you reveal an island or choose to stop. And if no islands were revealed this way, card name deals X damage to any target where X is the number of cards revealed this way. A whammy deck consists of plains, islands, swamp, mountain, and forest. No. This card requires a completely different deck. No. it requires a completely different deck. No, not gonna happen. Aggressive, I think that this could be a mechanic. We do see some extra combat cards, typically in white and red. So I don't know if it would make sense on a green creature necessarily, but yeah, I don't inherently see a reason why aggressive couldn't be a thing. Seems reasonable. This is a token copy of a card that already exists. If they said what the card was, I think that'd be fine. But I just don't see a reason for it. Essentially, what does it say? Z is paid with 1 N from any source that could produce 2 or more. Nope. This is so unlikely to Also, a 1/2 counter, obviously, not going to happen really. But this, no, unlikely. I don't think that referencing specific color pairs is likely at all. Current Forest Land token. This card absolutely should exist. I love the idea of land tokens. They don't have to be basic. They can have the basic land types. So I mean, we already have like Stomping Ground. That's a mountain and forest. It's not basic. Making a forest land token, it would be a forest, but it wouldn't be basic. So anything that destroys non-basics would still destroy those. I think it's really cool. I think it's an interesting way of working ramp into some other colors, white. But yeah, no, I think it's really cool. We see effects like this already. Thrun, other cards. Nullhide Ferox. We see effects like these. Typically, they're on actual creatures. I see no reason to put it on instant sorceries as well. Again, it's a card that references casting other actual cards. If Magic were a digital-only card game, I could see this card being printed. But since it's not, it's just so unlikely for this to be seen. No. You have to write on the card. That's not going to be something. Wizards is, I'm sure, not super excited about physically modifying cards ever since the whole Chaos Orb or whatever it is. This one's weird. It has an entirely different zone, essentially. It's not likely to see play. I don't think we're going to see a new zone for quite a while, if at all, frankly. Storm on an Aura. I think Storm on Auras could work. Hell, I think Storm on creatures could work as well. Essentially you're just making copies of them on the stack. I think that's reasonable. Thing is, Storm, there's a Storm skill for a reason, so unlikely to see it. Double any effect that doubles. Very limited in what you can do with it. Unlikely to see effects like this. I think it just makes more sense to have more cards that just say double a thing. Yeah. This is referencing whether or not you win first, and I think that this is technically more likely than having a card that makes you go first, or makes you go second, for example. I still don't think it's very likely, and yeah, there's just not a ton of reasons to have effects like this. Landship is similar to kinship. It's a land you may reveal it if you do create a thing. Cool. Essentially, it's making fun of kinship and landfall. So you can look at the type of card in your library. If it's a land, you can reveal it and create a thing. Sure. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it's just a creature type with this, creature you control get a thing. Even though like this is kind of making fun of this, I think landship reasonable to see. Kinfall, we see effects like this, even if it's not called Kinfall. But I think having a set where lands matter while not wanting to do landfall per se, I think you could see something along the lines of landship. This enchants 2 creatures. I do not think, like for that reason, I'm out. I don't think this card would be printed. I like the idea. Like this is very similar to Soul Bond from Abzan Restored. But the difference with Soul Bond is that it's not enchantment. They're on the actual creatures themselves, and you can choose how to Soul Bond things. For what it's worth, also, you couldn't re-Soul Bond if a thing is already Soul Bonded, but you could, not have the other card king die if the first one dies, so. The complete. I don't know what they're doing with Phyrexian. Vorinclex, Phyrexian, they haven't gone back and errated other Phyrexians. I just don't understand what they're doing. Mega Legendary, we've obviously seen effects like Relentless Rats, 7 Dwarves, Shadowborn Apostle. Like we've seen cards like this that can have any number of cards with the same name in the deck. It's unlikely that Wizards is going to have restricted cards, essentially, just like as a part of the card, because then like it just gets into variance more, right? It's like instead of your deck building being rewarded, you're now just rewarded for drawing your mega legendary card, right? Has the activated abilities all of the permanents in the battlefield. We've seen something similar with like Necrotic Ooze or whatever it is from Scar's Block, I think. Bolas to an extent, the Dragon God. So, yeah, this is weird. this card doubles your life total, and then you have a lose condition. You personally can't destroy this. I think as a one-of card, this could see print. It's just very strange, very, very strange. This turns you into a planeswalker. I just don't think. I've said it already with like the coalition type thing. I just think turning you, the player, into like, for what it's worth, we have seen something like this with Form of the Dragon. I think there's another form of there's Form of the Squirrel, but again, that's Silver Border. You know, Form of the Dragon, sure, like that's a thing, but like it doesn't literally give you the creature type dragon, right? This essentially turns you into a planeswalker, and that's just not great. I don't know how exactly this is supposed to work, but it looks like a normal split card. Just templated differently because they had to. If this is a normal split card, that seems fine to me. No, this essentially is like bingo. Again, you'd have to mark, you'd have to like mark down on your card. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, this card just seems strange. Evil Boros Charm, fucking hilarious. You have to choose one. Cool. Like, all of these things are reasonable. Small Helix. Your unblocked creatures get bigger. Make a spirit. Sure. I think the main interesting thing about this is the fact that it's 2 different hybrid costs. I see no reason to expect that to be possible. I think the joke here is that this is a black-green card with flying and vigilance. Black is allowed to have flying. Green is allowed to have vigilance. So, haha, it's kind of funny. But, I mean, other than, like, just the fact that it looks weird, it could see print, no problem, really. Having a spell that typically has restrictions unless you pay extra for it. I've seen that before. This is just a weird kicker. It's just weird kicker. I mean, technically, sure, a lot of things are just weird kicker, but like this really is just like weird kicker. Just template it differently to have kicker. Boom, it works. Literally just like 1 in a hybrid. Return up to two target black or green creature cards from graveyard to your hand. Kicker 1 and a hybrid. If this spell was kicked, you may choose any color of creatures or something like that. I don't know how they would word it exactly, but yeah. This is a card that does nothing, but it's not on a permanent. It's on a sorcery. I just love that. I don't know if it would work within the current rules because part of a resolution. No, I guess it could bounce it back to its hand. It's just very strange. The idea of this card is like, you get prowess triggers, you get storm count, you know, you get all these cool triggers for casting sorceries. Sure, it's funny, it's cute. It very limited design space. As a one-off card, it seems totally reasonable. This card's complicated, but I think it could work. Yeah, I don't see a reason why it couldn't work. Referencing modified would be kind of interesting. We've seen wizards move towards inclusive language for enchanted or equipped. We've seen in Silver Border them reference augment. Well, I don't remember exactly how they refer to them, but like augments were attached with equipped and enchanted. I feel like some version of the aberrant could be printed. Personal decoy is strange, but I think it could literally work. I mean, this is kind of interesting, right? Like, you can get 4 of these. You can get 2 and 1. You can get 2 of these, or you can just get this. I think that like weird modal spells could be done. I think modal still has enough design space right now that we're unlikely to see it anytime soon. But I think it's reasonable. This is choose a thing at random. No, like. This also like references plane chase. One of these is just like bad. It's just strange. It's too strange, and it's at random. Not gonna happen. I love the idea of Sliv Mizzet, by the way. I mean, yeah. Other than the fact that this is obviously a meme, Sliver's getting this on an effect. On a spell that's this expensive, I think that's reasonable. This is just a 3 split card. You have Smelt, Heard, and Saw. Smelt it. What? Maybe not. Also, isn't Smelt an actual card? I don't know. I don't know if 3 split cards can be a thing currently. Start a Fire looks like a normal split card to me. Sliv Drazi Monstrosity. I mean, yeah. Other than the fact that Wizards is not going to bring Annihilator back anytime soon, I think this card could literally see print. Wrath of Sod. Yeah, I mean, we essentially see effects like this with Song of the Dryads that I talked about already. This is only limited to creatures, which is good. This is similar in nature to Shadow the Sky, because your opponent gets something if they have decent creatures. This one, they literally get something. They get lands. Not only do I think this card could see print, I think it'd be a very interesting card. The main issue here is that this doesn't destroy. Getting around destroy effects could be a little too strong. This might need to cost 5 or 6, but I think it's still pretty interesting. We've seen effects that care about that allow your opponent to have a little bit more leeway in what they discard. For example, Acquisitions Expert, I want to say, the party rogue from Zendikar lets your opponent reveal a number of cards equal to your party. So I think, yeah, you can say something like that. I think that's reasonable. Why do I think this would be a short video? Switching steps, not gonna happen. Having extra steps, reasonable. Switching steps, no. Drawing cards from the bottom of your library, just no. I just don't think there's a reason to. Like, I feel like it's more... I think that it's more likely that there will be a card that says play with your library upside down than a card that draws... that has you draw from the bottom of your library to the top. But I'm not sure. No, I mean, this is just Black Lotus, but worse. This one is tied to keywords and ability words, so this actually gets into an issue with cards that have landfall against cards that don't have landfall. Gross. Pierce an Angel. Reminds me a lot of Lich's Mirror. Obviously reminds me of Platinum Angel. It's weird, but I think this could work, technically. It'd be maybe too strong, I don't know. Equipment or vehicle? I see no reason why this couldn't be printed. If you turn it into a creature by crewing it, it'll fall off, and you can't re-equip it while it's a creature. But like, I think that's probably fine. I love how they're riding one and wielding another. It's pretty funny. This feels like a weird version of Mutate. I don't like it. This one's interesting. I think having a land cycle that has to be used during your first main phase, I think that is something that could be printed today. Barry's Land, it's a basic land, but for colorless things, we're probably not going to see it. I think it does do annoying things. Even just like beyond the domain thing, I think having basic colorless things are strange. I mean, this is super strange. Like, it's super, like, we have creature lands. There's not really a reason why we can't have equipment lands. Yeah, there really isn't. Like within the terms of the rules, this seems totally fine. Enchantment Lands, we're unlikely to see these just because of Wizards' hesitancy based on the artifact lands, and I think that's probably reasonable. Yeah, the market card, no, it's not going to happen. I mean, this essentially is just a more complicated Dryad Arbor. Wizards has probably not loved Dryad Arbor for a ton of reasons over the years, and I just doubt we're going to see another Dryad Arbor effect for quite a while, if at all. Noxious Bayou is fucking hilarious. It's very similar to the Pain Lands, except this doesn't allow you to make a colorless mana, and you get a poison counter. You can tap a Pain Land a lot more than you can tap this before you can die, so possibly we'll see it. Unreasonable. This is interesting. It has an okay chance of being printed. Not a super high chance, because it does mess with your starting hand in a way that is a little different. Like, it's not just that you're like changing your mulligans, you're literally like putting this in your hand. It is legendary, although Wizards doesn't love legendary lands. It's strange. It's definitely strange. Caring about other colors, I think that's totally reasonable on a land, even if it's a dual land. Like, although we're unlikely to see them for a while, most likely. I think there are other designs for this, but having a tri-land, a card that cares about triple lands but doesn't give you all three of the lands, I think there's some room for that. And then Wasteland. This is the card that I was talking about. This is a card that should exist, like right now. You just destroy a non-basic land, and they just get a waste token. It's great. It's perfect. You get to get rid of the land. You don't have to deal with any of the shuffling issues. Bada bing, bada boom. This card's great. I love it. Anyway, I've taken way too long. I have a PO box. I'd like to thank my patrons, especially Fogwind and Balater. I'm still working, guys. I've been going through a little bit of stuff, but you needn't worry. Everything should be fine. Thanks everyone who's sticking around. I hope you've enjoyed this weird video. Let me know. I don't know. Let me know what you thought about this weird style video. I'll get back to normal arena content. Hopefully pretty soon. Anyway, until next time, all will be one.